Pioneer will always be around. We will always be kind of developing it and taking it further. What's kind of the best approach for the community through some other direction or methods if there was that kind of black swan event that, you know, all of Kusama parachains decide that they're not involved anymore?
Hello, welcome to Crypto Interviews. My name is Claudio and this is Crypto Shannon. Joining me today is Shannon Christie from Bitcountry Metaverse. It's the first time on this channel. We've had different people on this channel talking about Bitcountry. We've had Ray. We've also had Chris as well. Actually, Chris was on a live stream. We actually met at an event. We've met twice actually. So now we finally get to talk to Shannon as well. We're going to talk about the latest updates from Bitcountry, and I'm sure you're going to be excited to hear what he has to share. Shannon, welcome. I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you. And if you just want to quickly introduce yourself, maybe, and just share how you got started in the Bitcountry team.
Sure thing. Cool. Thanks for that. So thanks for the invitation and for getting me onto the show and such. Of course, probably everyone is familiar with kind of my role, as you kind of introduced a little bit. So I'm working with the Bitcountry and Metaverse Network team. So I've worked primarily as CTO, as being one of the co-founders. So I get involved in basically all the different aspects of the project in kind of a technical sense. So that will be, of course, from the website to the integration of the API and all that kind of different stuff. But kind of the area where most of my time goes is still on the metaverse side. So in terms of introducing or developing the features related to the 3D world. So if you see things in terms of how the experience goes once you actually enter into the world, when you start playing around in there and having all the building facilities and all that kind of stuff, that's where I put most of my focus and most of my time. I got involved in the project quite a while back. So we had kind of a lot of interaction, discussion, of course, when the project was starting in 2018 or so. But I kind of got into the whole thing much more completely and putting a lot more time into it around 2019, towards the end of 2019. It's been a really exciting project to work on and things like that. And we've already had a very successful kind of distribution of KaosLand land and things like that. So it's really exciting to see everything coming together and everyone be able to get involved in the project and such now.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've done a really great job. I know that Ray has praised you on multiple occasions. He called you the metaverse boss because you're responsible for a lot of the hard work behind the scenes. So you've done a great job. Congratulations on that. I think the graphics are just absolutely awesome. It's cutting edge, let's say, like basically the latest generation. That's how it looks. So we're really looking forward to getting more updates on that. But what about the VR support? I mean, is that something that's coming up very soon or later, do you think?
So in terms of
You get the full experience,
VR,
basically.
yeah. In terms of VR and kind of the different devices and such that we want to support, they are on the roadmap. It's something that we have done kind of some very simple or basic proof of concept design and work in the past to be able to set up VR. But at this stage, a lot of the focus really just been on getting KaosLand out for everyone to play with, getting a lot of the kind of core infrastructure and functionality set up first. So it is on the roadmap. It is something that we're working towards. But at this stage, we just felt that in terms of priorities, it was important to get kind of this core thing working that people could get into on their laptop, on their desktop, get into the world, enjoy it, be able to build out their metaverses and start seeing that come to life. And then we would be able to start shifting more of the focus into VR, into mobile devices and seeing how we could push it further with different devices that could access it. But for now, the focus has really been on desktop and laptops and things like that.
Very good, very good. And also social login is one of the new features they've launched as well, which is really cool. You can just log in with your Twitter account and you can get a wallet automatically generated and then to be able to access the metaverse, which is really cool. Now let's talk about KaosLand. So what's the next phase coming up for KaosLand? I know that Justin was saying that the next release is going to be related to state staking. So please talk about that. Like how does it actually work, if you can?
Okay. Yep. Sure. So a lot of the details will kind of be shared in different announcements and articles and such that we will be releasing, and some of the ones I've already briefly touched on a bit. But really, it's just another opportunity for you to take advantage of land and things that you have for doing staking. So we didn't necessarily at this stage, like I said, things are kind of in progress and in development. So some things may be a little bit subject to change, but the idea being that the staking is not necessarily going to be a similar approach as such as this staking you've already been doing with NEAR. It will likely be using probably BIS or something like that to get more involved in that area. And there's a lot of discussion about kind of what are the benefits and the purpose of getting into estate staking. And I know a lot of discussion has been centered around things like helping to sort of do kind of like conviction or something like that when it comes to proposals and such inside of the metaverse. So it could be helping you to be able to have a better say in terms of the direction that the metaverse will be heading in next. But like I said, in terms of a lot of those details, we're still going through and getting a much clearer picture on how that will fit together. So I'd still recommend that the best way to find out what is the staking about with estate staking and what is its point and how does it all fit together is to check all the, of course, announcements and articles and such so you have a clear picture on what exactly it does, how it can benefit you. But as always, it's really important for the team to make sure that it all makes sense and that's something that people find appealing and want to get involved in.
Absolutely. And so after estate staking, I mean, one of the new features that's going to come up with for KaosLand, and I think that's going to be like the third phase, is that the actual metaverse itself. So will we be able to enter our land and start building on it? Is that the next phase after, or is there something else coming up before?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the phases that's coming up. At this stage, I think it's one that we're really looking at being kind of the next part that you'll be able to get into. But of course, like I said, that's it's subject to the roadmap. So the thing that the team's been working on, so of course, since it is in the 3D part, it's where a lot of my focus has been. So we already have a lot of the CBD and everything all set up in terms of like the 3D models that make up the buildings, the design of the land and the terrain and things like that. And if you happen to check the development updates and such, you would have seen that some of the big things that we've been working on lately is making improvements to the terrain system. So we had shared some kind of sneak peeks of the terrain in the past.
Yeah.
But one of the limitations that had happened with that initial implementation was we couldn't necessarily go that detailed, and the view distance couldn't be that far. So kind of in the last month and things like that, the team has really been pushing it further. So we've got the situation now where we're able to push the view distance really quite far out. At the same time, we're able to have more detail at the same time. So that was something that we were putting a lot of focus in to make sure that that was all technically ready for the best accessibility on different devices, keeping resource usage low and things like that. And that's all sorted and ready to go more or less and going through and making some of the other changes and such as well to get everything really in a position that when you get into KaosLand, it flows well, it feels good. So yeah, that's something that we were kind of waiting to finish off and get those final tweaks in before we released access to KaosLand out to the public and such. And with that, really progressing very well. I think we're on schedule to be able to get that out sooner rather than later for people to try out.
Absolutely. That's awesome to hear. And let's talk. I don't know if you can talk about this. Hopefully you can, but I'm going to try anyway. It's how close is your estate to the center is important, right? That
Hmm.
actually makes a
Yeah.
difference when it comes to estate staking and rewards.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so if you have a small estate, let's say a because like 2 units is the absolute minimum that you can have when it comes to an estate. If you
Hmm.
have a 2 unit estate and it's, let's say, on block -1 or -2, which is
Hmm.
close to the -0, which is right in the center, right? And then you've got
Hmm.
another person who's got like maybe a 20 unit estate at like
Hmm.
-15 or -16. Will the person with the 2 units actually get more rewards than the person with the 20 units? Because I know it's a bit hard for you to say for sure, but just guesstimation. I mean, is the difference quite big still, or would you say it's closely matched just because that person with the 2 units is super close to the center?
Okay, yeah, that's an interesting question. Um, so in terms of the rewards related to estate staking, it is still related to how much land, it is related to how much stake you put into it, and it's related to the location. Now, I can't say with any conclusion at this stage in terms of what kind of rewards and things, but I know that there is discussion about we wanted to make the rewards interesting, maybe not exactly linear or in a way that is kind of too easy to guess with. There may be extra things related to being closer to the center. Um, that could help to make it a little bit different, a little bit interesting, and kind of go a little bit further than just thinking, oh, I will get more reward in this way or more reward in that way, for example.
Yeah.
So I know that is something that is kind of being discussed. As I said, I can't say that this will definitely happen or not happen, but it's something that you should keep an eye out to see what we discuss and what we release in official announcements and articles and such. But we want to make it interesting and rewarding and feel quite interesting how it all fits together in terms of where you stake here and where you stake there and such. That's all I can really say at this stage.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's talk a bit about Bit as well. I know that Ray was saying the last time we chatted that there are plans to integrate Bit into through the HM to open up the HRMP channel with say Moonriver or with other parachains and to eventually get Bit out there on those dexes on those layer two solutions on top of those parachains. I mean, do you have any updates on that? And is that still in the plan anytime soon, or is that for like further on after KaosLand launches, do you think?
Um, Again, it's something that the team is working towards. So I know that the blockchain team has been doing a lot of testing and integration in terms of enabling the transfer of different currencies and tokens on the blockchain. It's something that we had actually started quite a long time ago in terms of integrating with even like some of the other parachains to get all the value transfer going on. So
Yeah.
I know that discussion and that work is happening and has been happening for quite a while, and I know that that is the end goal that we're working towards. I think at this stage it's really that we always want to focus on having more or less one priority at a time. So we want to make sure
Right.
that when we do something that we do it well, that we put all of our focus and effort into it. So while we're focusing on KaosLand at the moment, that will be our primary focus for the foreseeable future until we start to get further along and we feel like, yeah, no, this is the time where we can start shifting the focus a little bit. So it will probably be a little bit later on, but I know that we are going through that process with different parachains to make sure that we can have that support in the future. But yeah, in terms of if it's happening very soon, probably a little bit later on from looks of things at this stage.
All right, sounds good. And let's talk about the differences between KaosLand Metaverse and the other metaverses within BitCountry Pioneer. I mean, what is the plan there going forward? Is the focus going to be mostly on KaosLand? Because I know that the team were saying that they're going to host events on KaosLand. So that's why that central area is very important because that's where all the events are going to take
Mm.
place. So what's going to happen to the other metaverses that people can ultimately purchase outside of KaosLand within BitCountry?
Hmm. Yeah, well, I think for us for Chaos Land, it's really about showing what a metaverse can be like on BitCountry as a platform, what is possible, kind of a showcase in a regard, a demo of what can be done. But it isn't just a demo, of course. It's really about making sure that this is what it looks like when a metaverse is developed and designed in a way that makes sense for the platform. This is what's possible. This is what can be achieved. And it's kind of at least our personal one that we're working on. It's important for us as well that we don't want to have a situation where people feel like, KaosLand is the only metaverse. There will
Yeah.
be others that will be developed. There'll be ones made by community and by partners and all sorts of different things like that. And we don't necessarily want to have a situation where it feels like, the only one that matters is KaosLand. So that's one that, yes, we as a team will be looking at and developing. It's where the community can get involved. So anyone who's interested in what we're doing as BitCountry as a platform, you can definitely check out KaosLand. That's where we'll be testing out a lot of different features and things like that. You'll be able to see the different events and such that we're running. So in terms of a metaverse is always representing a community, a group, an organization, or something like that. KaosLand is kind of our one. So that's where we'll be doing a lot of things related to us. But we don't want people to feel like that the other metaverses aren't as important, things like that. We still want to make sure they have um, their spotlight, their chance in the limelight, and things like that. So they'll have their chance to promote and develop and build that out. And of course, depending on the metaverse, we may or may not get involved with providing some kind of guidance and advice and support and things like that. But really, at this stage, KaosLand is really just about us and developing out a metaverse. And it's kind of your way of getting to know our community a bit better and getting involved in the development and such.
Right, absolutely. Cool. That's great to hear. But I do have another question on the actual structure of the metaverse. So inside the metaverse, be it KaosLand or the other metaverses,
Mm-hmm.
is it possible to have customized functions? So for example, let's say I want to create some sort of configurable NFTs which are specific to my estate, which
Mm-hmm.
would give access to specific people who hold that NFT only to the let's say to the buildings that I'm building within my own estate. So, for example, let's
Mm-hmm.
say I want to organize something inside a building, right? An
Mm-hmm.
event, and they need an access card to access that. Like, will we be able to
Mm-hmm.
customize that? Like, is that actually configurable, or how would it work?
Yep, sure thing. Thanks for the question. That is something again that we've actually kind of touched on a little bit in the past and in some articles, I believe, or maybe I'm so confused with our internal discussions that I've forgotten whether or not we mentioned it. But yeah, we really want to develop that kind of functionality where people could designate a specific NFT. Let me try that again. To have things like access permissions to an area. So a lot of that would likely fall under the experience framework that my team such are working on. With that, that's where you can set up a lot of different kind of scripted events or other things like that. And with that, you would be able to set up, hey, only these people can activate this event, only these people can enter this area. And the way that that would work is you could designate an NFT collection that maybe someone else had made and say, hey, people who have this collection, I will allow access. Or you could mint a new collection yourself and say, hey, these are my passcodes, or these are my cards for being able to access this area.
Yeah.
And as long as they own that, then they would be able to enter into it. And that would also relate into even the event world or the event system. That we have as well. So you could, for example, have a building or something inside your estate, and you
Yeah.
could link it to an event. Now, an event space is usually kind of like a separate world in a way. It could be like a stadium, it could be like a conference hall, it could be like an amphitheater or something like that.
Yeah.
And you would be able to link the two together so that when people went to this building and say, hey, do you want to enter this space? And with the event world system, again, has that same ability to say, only people with these NFTs can access. It could be one-time access. It could be kind of like permanent membership. We want to be able to support all these different ways of allowing access. So you could set it up for one time, multiple times, only every now and then, like a permanent membership, or just open to anyone to get in.
That's very good. But what would be the challenges there? So I'm assuming you'll need to know coding because you need to configure it in a certain way that you want, right? It's configurable. So I don't think, I mean, will the team actually provide us with the tools, with a dashboard to be able to perform some of these uh, typical activities? For example, to give access to certain buildings within our
Mhm.
estate without needing any coding experience whatsoever, or will we actually have to write a script in a specific programming language to allow us to do that? Because that's one of the things that I think would
Yeah.
present a challenge depending on how it's done, right?
Yeah. 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 So kind of I guess there's multiple things I want to touch on in that regard. So in terms of the access and such, then yes, for some of those very common things, there will be more or less a kind of point and click kind of system. So you could select this kind of like restrict access, you could specify it, you could link it to an NFT, and more or less it would be quite a simple way to do it. For the event world, that one will be very straightforward. That one will basically just be like kind of like setting up a new um, uh, channel or something like that as an example, like setting up a YouTube channel, for example. You could
Yeah.
go through, fill in all the forms, and at the end, you could say, hey, these are the access permissions for this particular event. This is when it runs. This is the schedule. So all of that will be in just a more traditional form. When it comes to restricting things inside the world, that one will probably be a little bit more involved. But like I said, I see that with the team, we want to make it as simple as possible and where we can. So for restriction, maybe that could be something that's quite straightforward to do with just another tool inside the world. But when you want to go further, when you want to make it so, hey, when you enter in the space, the door opens up and fireworks goes off, you'll probably need to have something that has a bit more involvement in scripting. In the scripting area, we do want to support different levels. So the kind of initial design that we've been doing is support for Rust. So Rust would be kind of like compiled into WASM, and then that would be able to run kind of these different experiences through the experience framework. In the future, we've designed in a way that we want to support other languages further on in the roadmap. So it might be like Go and C++ and different things like
JavaScript
that
as
as
well.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and different things like that, while making sure that the security of the whole thing is paramount, making sure that people can't mess with things they're not meant to.
Yeah.
So JavaScript would probably be done through something a bit more like assembly script, so it can again compile into WASM. But that's something that we need to see a bit further on the roadmap. We do also want to support a low code system. So you can imagine it's a little bit like drawing like a flow graph. So you could put down like, hey, player enters this general area and connect it to another node, and the node might be like, check for NFT ownership. And if the value is true, then you could go to the open door and then go to the next part and say, play fireworks.
Yeah.
So we are working on a low code solution as well for you to be able to set up these experiences through the experience framework as well.
Perfect. Yeah, no, that sounds like an awesome idea. And you're going to open the gate to a lot more users, I think, this way, rather than just restricted to the coders managing the
Mm.
metaverse and then the users joining the coders metaverse, which I think would be a bit strange. Maybe it could work out, but yeah, I think you would limit a lot of the possibilities. So yeah, great idea on the dashboard. Let's talk a bit about the BitCountry Continuum. So we've been speaking about Pioneer and how KaosLand is going to evolve and other metaverses within it. But what about on Continuum? I mean, is the plan that you're going to have a continuum metaverse, just like we have the KaosLand one, or is it going to be called something else? I don't know if you can share any of those details.
I think I can share a bit. I might not be able to share specifics, but um, with Continuum, we will do something kind of similar to what we've done with Pioneer. It
Yeah.
will have differences, different name, kind of a different approach and style, but we still want to follow kind of a similar process. Pioneer is about, I mean, pioneering is what it's about, getting into the whole space and getting
Yeah.
started and exploring and giving the community an opportunity to come along for the ride. Continuum will be much more of a professional kind of enterprise type of feel to it in terms of how it's implemented and built out. There will likely be a metaverse that is again kind of the representation of us there, but we see that kind of the audience or the people who use Continuum could be maybe a little bit different than the people who use Pioneer. We don't necessarily want a situation where Continuum and Pioneer are the same thing, just in two different places. We
Yeah.
want there to be differences between them so that Pioneer will always be around. We will always be kind of developing it and taking it further. And Continuum will also be developing in kind of maybe in parallel, but kind of a little bit different direction. So depending on what your needs are, of whether you're a big company or something like that, you might end up choosing, say, Continuum only, or you might end up choosing Pioneer only. And that's something that's really important to us.
And have you thought about this black swan scenario where, I mean, we've seen a lot of cases right now with parachain teams kind of not necessarily migrating. We have seen a case of migration with Kilt, for example, complete migration over to Polkadot. But I mean, more of a, let's say, more attention given towards the main network, the main parachain on Polkadot rather than the canary. I mean, do you think something like that could potentially happen should a lot of these parachain teams migrate to Polkadot and kind of abandon Kusama? I mean, would you see BitCountry then be forced to take one of these different decisions to just migrate everything over to Continuum, or do you always see a utility for Pioneer?
Like I said, for us, we want Pioneer to have its own purpose, its own story. And Pioneer will always be important and special to us to make sure that it continues to live, develop, and continue forward. So, in terms of what the future can hold, it can sometimes be a little bit hard to say. For now, it's really important to us that we want Pioneer to always be relevant and always be important. That's what I can say at this stage. We
Yeah.
will be always working towards making that happen. I know we have a few different ideas in mind on how we could handle something like that happening. Um, but for now, I can really just say that we want to make sure that Pioneer is always relevant, something to that you can invest your time in
Yeah.
because it will be sticking around for the long term. We don't plan on dropping Pioneer just because Continuum comes out. They will be two separate products and they will have their own point and purpose. And we're not going to have any cross pollination in terms of this one does the same thing as that, for example. We want them to be different.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's pretty obvious now that you're saying that the enterprise are going to focus on Continuum, whereas Pioneer is going to be more for the retail, for people that want to experiment, they want to launch a metaverse and play around there and create some cool features within it.
Yeah,
That's the
kind of like that. Kind of like that. It's one of those things that we're thinking kind of like big corporations at this stage. Again, I can't say exactly that this is what's happening, but we are thinking kind of maybe bigger groups might want to go to Continuum, and kind of smaller individuals and community and things like that might want to go to Pioneer.
yeah.
Again, it's going to be something that we'll see how it goes on the roadmap and such. But we do want to make sure that there is that distinction between the two, that they have their point and their purpose.
Yeah. And one of the things, just to move on and talk about the coins as well, we've got BIT, which is the fuel token of the Bitcountry Pioneer metaverse ecosystem right now. But I've
Mhm.
been told that it's also going to be used in Continuum and it's going to be exactly the same token. It's just going to be like, I mean, it's going to have like the same supply. It's going to be generated, used in the same way. It's going to be bridged across and it will be able to be used in both Continuum and Pioneer. So is that really the case, or what is the plan with that? And if you could talk a bit about it, is it
Um,
interchangeable basically?
yeah. I think at this stage, from my perspective, I can't really comment too much on it. Um, yes, it is a lot of different things that we've discussed. Like whenever we're doing development stuff, we're always kind of like, what's kind of the best approach for the community? How can we bring interest and liquidity? How can we make it appealing while making sure as well that we don't harm one or the other? For example, like we don't want a situation where having bits traveling around too easily might make things difficult. Maybe it destroys its value and things like that. So there will always be a lot of thought that we'll be putting into this. So that's why I say that I don't think I can really give too much comment on it. I can say it is something that we have discussed and that we have been looking at. Um, but in terms of how it will turn out in the end, I think it's
Yeah.
best to keep an eye on announcements and such to
Wait
see the
for the
direction that we
announcement.
decide to go forward.
Cool, cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, one of the other things I'd like to know from a technical perspective, I mean, do you think it
Mhm.
makes sense to, again, kind of a black swan event, but it has to be asked, abandon near altogether and just have a NUM, which is going to be the coin of Bitcountry Continuum, and use that across the two ecosystems? Would that actually make sense from a technical standpoint, or do you always need to have a different coin for Pioneer?
Um, I think at this stage it makes more sense to always have Pioneer using near. Um, I'll say that this is my opinion at this stage. This isn't necessarily the opinion and thoughts and direction that we have at BitCountry or Metaverse
Yeah,
Network. But just from my thoughts right at the moment, if we had something like that happen, we might be able to look at how can we enable liquidity and value transfer between Pioneer and Continuum through some other direction or methods if there was that kind of black swan event that
yeah,
all of Kusama parachains decide that they're not involved anymore, but
yeah,
we're still the last one standing type of thing. Um, that would be something that I would be interested to look at and think about. But like I said, that's just my thoughts. That's not necessarily the thoughts and direction of. That's not something that's on the roadmap. That's not necessarily something that we're saying that we will do, but that is definitely something that I'd be interested to look at as a potential solution to an issue like that.
Absolutely. And I don't know if you're aware, Bridge Hub has just launched on as a common good parachain. Well, it's not called a common good anymore. It's a system parachain. It launched on Kusama. It's not active yet, but it will be active very soon, I think, in a few months. And then we're going to be
Mhm.
able to transfer assets from Kusama over to Polkadot and vice versa. So that's going to be interesting. It's going
Mm,
to have the teleport feature, just like with XCM, you know, so it's going to be
mhm.
one that could change things, I say, going forward. So we'll see.
Yeah,
Cool. Yeah,
yeah.
I think I've covered everything. I don't have any other questions. If there's anything exciting that you'd like to share, please go ahead. Anything that we should look forward to.
Yeah, definitely. So of course I'm very excited to see when we open up access to KaosLand for everyone to get into the world, so you can experience the terrain and things like that. We're really excited about getting the local governance and council set up. I believe that's the next step after we get the estate staking. I've got a lot of things going on, so forgive me sometimes if even my own memory of the roadmap is slightly off.
No problem.
So I'm really excited to see that coming in so that people can start to have proposals and voting things going on. So that could be things, for example, like maybe changing the sky or changing how the sun looks to a different color and such. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to when we can start releasing examples of the experience framework in its use as kind of like mini games or different events and things like that. We are working on a kind of we'll call it a mini game. We're working on kind of a mini game at the moment. So hopefully once that's a little bit further along, we'll be able to share some more details in terms of how you can get involved, what it's about, kind of the Web3 way of games in terms of rewards and things like that.
Yeah,
So I'm really looking forward to that coming together so you can check that out and try it. Um, but yeah, I think those are kind of the main things I'm really looking forward to seeing KaosLand, people getting into it, building it out, seeing what that's like, the governance and such taking effect, and the experience framework when we get a little bit further along with that.
sounds
I
good.
think
Awesome.
those are the main things I'm looking forward to at this stage.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Thank you. So a mini game could be a chaos mini game, right? Chaos land, chaos game, and expect chaos on Kusama.
Yeah, pretty much. We want those themes and the elements coming together. So, like we said, each metaverse is its own thing.
Yeah,
KaosLand will have its story. We don't necessarily want our story to affect other metaverses. You do your story in the way that you want it, but
yeah,
KaosLand, we're looking at our narrative, our story behind it. It's going to have its theme and its style, and each other metaverse can go for their own theme, their own style, their own story, and how it all fits together. So
perfect.
they are meant to be kind of like separate projects, right? So KaosLand is just our idea of what a metaverse should look like on BitCountry. So it's going to be really cool to develop that out.
Cool, Shannon. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for answering all these different questions. I think that's going to be an exciting time ahead for BitCountry. Lots of updates. So we'll make sure to follow BitCountry on Twitter. Again, the links will be posted in the description of this video and also in the pinned comment as well as the website. Thank you for watching once again, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.